Hey everyone, Spazzy Dragon aka Syndromes here, and welcome to part 4, I think, of Dwarf Fortress Playalong. So, in the previous videos, I already showed you how to download the game, how to set it up, how to create the world that we're actually going to sandbox around in, and today it's finally time to prepare for our journey. So, we're going to launch the game as usual. Remember, we actually need to set some things here. A population cap of 10, a strict population cap of 20, no intruders, and no aquifers. So, after you've done that, let's launch the game. Right, so this is where we left off. We're going to start playing Dwarf Fortress. We're going to load up that little island that we created. And here comes the first things. We're going to move our keyboard a little like this so you can read down here what is going on. There are 3 images up here. The world itself, as we generated it, is shown here. If the world itself was a little bit larger, it would fit here. And the region is a smaller kind of version of the world. We can actually move around the region like this. With our cursor keys, we can explore what is going on. If we had a bigger world, it would mean that it would take many presses for this little X to actually move, and we would be actually looking at the region itself. So this is basically the same thing, only with different magnifiers. Right now, it's basically the same thing. We're looking at the same thing right now. It's just that, you know, if the world was a little bit larger, this thing would be a little bit more detailed. The local is in an even bigger magnification. So, what we're doing now is we're looking at many places. Every tile is split into a local group of tiles. There's a lot and a lot. Every single tile is represented in the game world somehow. So, as we're moving around with the keys like this, we can actually see many places. For example, this is where the water starts because we're at the edge of the water. If we move up a little bit, then we can see the sea. If we move over here, we can actually see where the ice begins, for example. But it's okay. So what's the difference between starting here, for example, and starting here? This is why we actually need to look at the right. So this is actually where we're going to get most of our information. First of all, we're going to show, it shows you what kind of biome you're in. For example, a temperate savanna over here. If we move a little bit upwards, it's going to say a temperate grassland because we're kind of closer to the place. If we move up a little bit more, it's going to say ocean, for example. Obviously, you can't embark onto an ocean. If we move down, we get a shrubland. We can move down a little bit more. It's a tropical ocean, a rocky wasteland. So basically, it depends on what embarking on these different places are going to change the overall things. It's going to change the stuff you can find there, the type of enemies you can encounter, the type of animals you can encounter, and so on and so forth. So the next thing is the temperature. I already mentioned temperature in the very first episode when we are actually, you know, setting, the second probably episode where we were talking about, you know, many settings. So in warm climates, you don't get as much rain. The pools of water on the surface tend to evaporate a lot. And if we move up a little bit, you can get colder temperate climates are probably the best for a beginner because it lets you experience both a summer and a winter. So it's going to both evaporate and freeze your water instead of just, you know, bad all year round. And if you move up a little bit more, you can get cold or freezing temperatures, and which are obviously going to be, you know, freaking ice all over. Second, so the third entry is trees. So trees are actually a really valuable resource, and this is going to show you how many trees you have on that site. So if we move around a little bit, you can see that currently we have really sparse trees because we're in a savanna. If we move around a little bit more, for example over here, it's going to change to temperate shrubland, for example, and we suddenly have a lot of trees. It's going to be in the green, right? And there's also, well, if you go to the ocean, obviously there's no trees, but you can have the same effect if you go to the mountains, for example. There's no trees in the mountains, you know, just like that. So basically, this just to show you how many trees you have. Other vegetation. These are stuff like grass, berries, you know, stuff you can pick off from the surroundings. So obviously dwarves will need to eat, so if you embark somewhere where there's a lot of other vegetation, you can actually sustain them pretty easily. And last but not least, we have the surroundings. Now, surroundings is what I said about the local nature. If we would have made if we would have generated a world which had a much more natural savagery setting to higher, then the surroundings everywhere would be wilderness. So let's move around a little bit, see if this changes a lot. Oh, there we go. Now it's the untamed wilds. It means there's a lot of wild things over here. We have tigers, we have rhinos, a lot of really dangerous creatures. And if we move up a little bit, maybe we can have some other surroundings. For example, calm. It means that this place, for example, has almost little to no natural savagery in terms of creatures. So if you embark here as a new player, you will probably need to only worry about invaders in the form of other civilizations. Which sometimes is a good thing and sometimes a bad thing, because some of these animals, if they're, you know, wild animals, you can actually hunt for food, you can try to capture and tame them, for example, and do all sorts of cool things you have if you know how to do it. So, for the sake of this tutorial in particular, please find some place where there's a calm sort of surrounding. Now, since you're running your own game along mine right now, I will quickly tell you it really doesn't matter where you embark, because the overall gameplay is going to be kind of the same no matter where you embark, right? Don't worry about that. I'm not going to go into full detail about things like how to check what kind of elevation you are at, how to check maybe you're on a big slope of a huge mountain, you maybe don't want that, although I am going to check it for myself. Yeah, there we go. But last but not least, what we need to quickly talk about is this part here. So this is telling you what sort of resources you have at your site. So this little triangle over here is what you are going to see when you play the game. So every single square on the region is divided into local, and every single local is divided by, you know, tiles. You will always see 3x3 in your game, so this can show you how big the actual world is. So if we started here and to there, it would fit a lot of screens of in-game, you know, world. So sand is exactly what it sounds like. Sand is not really a useful, you know, useful sort of resource. We don't need to talk about that a lot. Clay is used for pottery, very deep soil. So this might change from soil to deep soil to very deep soil, depending on how thick the soil layer is until you start hitting the stone layer beneath that. Now, you need soil to farm things, and embarking in a place where there is no soil is actually going to lead to some really problematic things if you're a new player. Next, we have deep metals, which means that there's a lot of metal ore deeper down. If it said shallow metals over here, it means that the ore itself is closer to the top side. And last but not least, you have flux stone layer. It means that somewhere in here you have flux stone. Flux stone is basically what you need for the metal industry. We're going to talk about that in a completely separate video later along the line, but basically this is all you need to do right now. If you want to find, this is going to be the last thing we're going to touch up right now. If you want to find a specific location, you can use this thing right here. Press F to find desired location. We're going to do that right now. And then it is going to set us up with a amount of filters. So we can simply say we're going to use the up and down keys to move around, right? And we can say that maybe we want savagery to be low. We don't like, it's going to point out all of the places which are calm. Or if we don't want that, we can set it to high, and it's going to show us all of the untamed wilds, for example. We're going to set it to not specified. Next, we have evil. Now, there are other things in the game that might make you, lose the game, and that is necromancers. And they live next to a necromancer tower. Now, these biomes are evil in the sense there's a lot of mutated creatures, there's a lot of magical weather that are going to make things really bad. Basically, if you want a huge challenge, you might want to set the evil thing to yes, but we are going to set it to no. We're going to set it to no. Elevation is basically that. The elevation, the bigger the elevation is, the more layers of stuff you need to dig through to actually get to the good stuff, right? So we're actually going to set to low elevation, because we can. And temperature, so it's pretty much the same thing. For example, I don't want to embark in a place where there's either freezing or searing hot temperatures, so I just set the temperature to medium. Rain is the amount of rain. I already told you about the weather effects, how dwarfs might get upset if they are caught in the rain, for example. Fluxstone is, again, for the metal industry. You can pick out places that I have this. I'm not going to bother with these. And if you are playing with an amplifier on, you can turn it off here. So right now, we made it so that the only things that we chose, and which you need to choose right now, is to have the elevation to low, the temperature to medium, and the evil to low. And that's it. And after that, you can press enter and do the search. And it's going to point out all of the stuff. So it seems that there is no place completely unevil. So let's just press escape so it doesn't show us this place anymore. Now we're going to go back and set the evil to not specified. Let's run this again. And there we go. All of the green parts are basically like our filters are shown. So let's just pick one for the sake of ease. So there's no trees here. I don't want that. And we're going to embark here, I suppose. I'm going to quickly check another thing. Oh, we actually are on a slope. Whatever. It's okay. It looks like we're on a slope to a mountain, but that's not really a big thing. Alright guys, we found our place. Hopefully you found your place as well. And stay tuned for the next video where we finally go into the game and prepare for the embark itself, where we are going to choose all of our stuff. Yes, the biggest mindfuckery right now is setting up the game. As soon as you're done with this, don't worry, you have to do this, you need to only do this once every single time you want to start over. So, don't worry, this is not what the game is about. We're just, we're just setting up. And yes, the setup is kind of big. Anyway, this was Spazzy Dragon, aka Syndromes, and I'll see you in the next episode.